You don't have a confidence problem. You have a courage problem. And when the job, the colleague, or the system itself is beating you down, how do you stay motivated, inspired, energized, productive, and keep doing the work that you have been called to do? Today, we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about restoring confidence, developing and cultivating a growth mindset, and how driving impact within your work begins with courage. Welcome to another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. I am your host, Kyle King, and the goal of this podcast is to be able to help you create an ecosystem of academic excellence. Through inspiring conversations, practical strategies, and actionable insights, we empower educators, change makers, and leaders just like yourself. Do one thing: foster trust, collaboration, so that they can ultimately have the tools, the methodologies, and the strategies to cultivate and create an ecosystem of academic excellence. Recently, I spoke with an educator friend of mine who said simply, her school damaged her confidence, not just as a teacher, but as a human being. See, she worked with students facing academic struggles, like many of us do that work within the educational system: anxiety, behavioral challenges, and sometimes even very challenging situations at home. Yet she wanted to be what I call the hope doctor for those children, for those families, and help them believe that they could do anything despite their circumstance, despite their label, and despite how far behind they were in their academics. She began questioning her place in education, wondering how she could even inspire people in her community without even knowing where to start. But in this conversation, I reminded her of one thing. I wanted to remind her of all of the moments, all of the memories, and all of the times that she made a difference. All of those conversations that she had with students that were the aha moment. All of the interactions with parents where the parents dropped into tears and then she just embraced them. All of the moments where students didn't get it and didn't get it, and then it clicked for them and she saw that spark of excitement for their education again. And what I realized is that was the spark for her. See, confidence isn't about failing. Confidence isn't about never failing. It's about remembering your wins and honoring those times to be able to lean into what it took and how you were courageous enough, even when fear creeped in. That's what confidence looks like. Confidence, in my opinion, is developed through preparation. Confidence is built through being ready for these moments. And oftentimes, as an educator that's listening in right now, you are ready for these moments. You don't have to pull out a pamphlet or an SOP or a process document when a student comes to you in tears. You don't have to go back into that book or that Teach for Champion manuscript. And when a parent is asking you how to best support their student, you don't have to be able to go back in your lesson plan to figure out how to be able to navigate a challenging conversation in class. The beautiful thing about educators, you just got it. And the confidence gap in education is the reason that we cannot continue to flourish, not just for ourselves, but for the students that we were called to flourish for. Because if we're depleted, if we're operating at 20% battery life, if we're operating from a deficit, then how are we expecting to be able to pour in to our students and get them to 100% or overflow their cups or fill up their cups, fill up their minds or fill up their spirits if we're not operating from our absolute best? So what I want you to think about is instilling and installing a growth mindset into your system. When I think about just using the example of your battery life, if I was to pull out my phone and if I was to go to my phone and you have all of these different applications and then folders of applications, but if I was to say, like, hey, I have Google Drive up, Google Docs up, Google Sheets up, and I have them all up at the same time and they're all running in the background, you know what's going to happen? It's going to end up draining my battery. Over time, it's going to end up draining my battery faster than if those apps were closed out if I just simply close those apps out and simply lock my screen and set it on sleep mode. Now, it's like when you have your headphones in or you're on FaceTime, you're talking on the phone and you look up and you're at 80%. And then 3 minutes later, it feels like you're at 60%. And then 10 minutes later, oh my God, my phone's about to die. Because we're using energy and things are pulling from the energy of the battery in the phone. What I want you to understand is that confidence requires us to silence these inner critics. Confidence requires us to silence the inner critics of opinions of others, the inner critics of the doubts and worries, the inner critics of the baggage of past experiences, the inner critics of us not feeling good enough or this feeling of imposter syndrome. So in order for us to restore confidence, we have to be able to install growth mindset. And when I look at growth mindset, when I think about it, growth mindset is not just a buzzword. It's what I look at it as is a framework on how you can transform not only your life, but also how you show up at work. It transforms your mood. It transforms your energy. It transforms your perspective in all areas of your life. And winning in anything comes from a sense of consistency, a consistent effort. But before we can really be able to win and impact others and be able to transform students, it's important for us to understand how to fix ourselves and fix the kinks within ourselves. Oftentimes on the Contagious Culture podcast, I talk about this theory of better people produce better results. Better people are better teachers. Better people are better spouses. Better people are better parents. Better people are better siblings. In order for us to show up better, so that we can drive impact, so that we can restore confidence, so that we can be able to embody a growth mindset, it requires us to do one thing. And I love this scripture. Do not conform to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of our mind. In education, in leadership, in life, we have to renew our approaches to not just handling situations, but how we perceive environments, how we perceive institutions, how we perceive even people, because we must understand that we cannot produce fruit if we are not planted in something bigger than ourselves. We must produce fruit, whether it's confidence, resilience, or inspiration for our students. But before we can produce fruit, we have to ensure that we're operating from a place of a growth mindset. So what this looks like sometimes is even when we intellectually know the right path, if we're not aligned emotionally, spiritually, physically, that cognitive dissonance gets us off track. It's like we know what we're supposed to be doing. We're knowing how we're supposed to be thinking. We're knowing how we're supposed to be showing up. But true growth requires getting fully in and silencing all of that noise, like we talked about a little bit earlier. So what this looks like, what is growth mindset, in my opinion? Growth mindset is not these students are just not learning. Help me. I'm complaining. Growth mindset is, hey, I recognize that I'm having some engagement issues with students. How can I get students to better engage with students or with my lessons? I've recognized that students are showing up late all the time. How can I build better relationships with parents so that I can hold them accountable to get their students here on time? It's instead of complaining about the circumstance or the situation, it's framing it as a question, or how can I do this? Because when we start asking, how can we do this? It allows us to be held accountable for actually answering the question. So rather than, do we have the money to afford something? How can we get the money to be able to afford something, right? Or asking certain questions that are based in negativity or pessimism. It's more so asking the question of like, how can we collaborate together to be able to accomplish this? How can we work together to do this? How can we mobilize the resources? Who are the people that can be able to help me be able to accomplish this specific goal? So when we think about this confidence gap, We have to be able to install this growth mindset. And then what I believe is that allows us to restore confidence as individuals first. And when we're restoring confidence, what that looks like is silencing or deleting and closing out all of those mobile applications in our minds, in our thoughts, in our systems. Those mobile applications show up in education like, oh my gosh, my boss, I hate my boss, or I don't like the way that teachers are looking at me, or my students are talking about me, or the opinions of others, our own doubts and worries. Am I good enough as a teacher? The baggage of past experiences, all of these different things. Even though we make mistakes, even though we don't always get it right, Tyler Perry said it best. He said, he has never failed. He learns and grows. And even if you feel like a broken crayon, broken crayons can still color. And when I heard that statement about a broken crayon still being able to color, I think a lot of times we want to perceive or create this perception that we are perfectly positioned or perfectly put together right out of the box. But we don't recognize that even if we're broken, even if we're bent, even if we have some bad experiences, even if we have some doubts, even if we have some worries, even if we're experiencing certain things that are challenging for us, or things that we're processing through, we can still color. We can still paint a masterpiece. We can still be able to produce results. We can still be able to inspire and motivate and empower our students. So how do we restore confidence? How do we continue to install this growth mindset? By taking action. By taking action. Anxiety and worry and overwhelm live in inaction. But opportunities do not wait until we get ready. I want you to humble yourself. I want you to acknowledge what you don't know. I want you to grow through the pursuit of answers. Whereas asking yourself questions like, how can I afford the life that I want? How can I achieve my next big goal? How can I grow spiritually, financially, or professionally? How can I show up as a better educator on a day-to-day basis? How can I drive engagement or increase student achievement on a day-to-day basis? How can I be a better teammate? How can I be able to show up better for my colleagues or my school? How can I impact more intentionally within my organization? The answers often appear when we take action, learn, and adapt. For me, when I started asking questions at the beginning of any role that I've taken, or even at the beginning of every school year, my first question is, how can I be successful this year? The second question after that, well, what is the standard of success? And then who has already met or exceeded that standard? And how can I connect with them to be able to learn strategies? And then what are my measurables or my touch points so that I can quantify and have touch points so that I can ensure that I am tracking towards this overall goal of success? What does that look like? And then the final stage of that is, where do I need to develop so that I can be prepared to produce those types of results? See, oftentimes we may have amazing goals, amazing plans, amazing strategies to be able to create. But are you the actual type of person that can produce? All of us want to make millions. All of us want to increase our income. All of us want to build great businesses and all of these different things. Most of us. I'm not going to say all of us. But are you the person that can withstand a drought season? Are you the person that can deal with managing teams? Are you the person? Are you equipped and prepared and developed to be able to be the person that produces those type of results? Everyone wants to be the teacher of the year, to be able to be recognized. But are you prepared to be able to deal with the pressure? Are you prepared to be able to continue to push your students and hold students accountable and hold parents accountable, and then be able to train and equip other educators on your team? Are you willing to have people come into your classroom and learn your strategies as well? Attach your goals to your preparation process. So when we think about this confidence gap, when we think about this idea of how we restore confidence through the opportunity of installing or cultivating this growth mindset, What this allows us to do is go from confidence to impact. So restoring your confidence and embracing a growth mindset are wonderful. But it isn't just about feeling better. It's about creating real measurable impact, like we were talking about earlier, in every aspect of the world around you. So when we heal, like I said earlier, when we become better, when we heal and act courageously and align our mindset, we're no longer being held back by fear, by anxiety, by doubt, by past experiences, by other people's opinions, by all of these various things. Instead, we become leaders. We become change makers. We become educators. We inspire others to be able to grow as well. So think about it this way. Your confidence and mindset are the soil which impact grows. Without tending to the soil or without tending to your inner work, healing, learning, taking action, your ability to be able to influence others is limited. I'm going to say this again for you. If your confidence and mindset are the soil in which impact grows, without tending to the soil, which is your inner work, which is that learning, which is that taking action, which is that growing, which is that healing, your ability to influence other people and empower students is going to be limited on a day-to-day basis. But when you invest in yourself, when you invest in your energy, when you invest in your mindset, when you invest in your courage, when you start producing fruit that others can receive, students, colleagues, and communities begin to thrive. Now we're able to create an ecosystem of academic excellence, because not just you've done the work, but you've modeled success, you've modeled resilience, you've modeled growth, you've modeled purpose, you've modeled excellence, you've modeled empowerment, you've modeled integrity, you've modeled the very fabric of the things and the traits and the characteristics that other people will see in action. And when you do that, this ultimately translates to intentional leadership practices. See, growth mindset is not just this woo-woo and, I want to be better, I want to feel better. No, it's all connected to being able to how you impact as a educational leader. And there's 3 areas: our lead management, our team management, and our resource management. From a lead management standpoint, it helps us develop relationships with clarity, empathy, and purpose, because we're rooted in ourselves. So we're able to discern and lead from a more compassionate place. It allows us to be servant leaders. Number 2 is team management. Now we're able to engage more presently and more meaningful, so that we can be able to have a team that feels seen, supported, and respected and empowered. And then it allows us from a resource management standpoint to optimize or be able to use systems and processes more intentionally that are in alignment with the impact and the results that we're trying to be able to create as an institution. So we go from growth mindset to restoring confidence to being able to make impact through intentional leadership. Now, I know this is the Contagious Culture Podcast, and I know there's someone on here that is asking the questions of, Kyle, I'm in educational philanthropy or leadership, and I just want to know the 5 W's that can guide more impact-driven action. I know it. So I'm going to give you the 5 W's. The 5 W's are you ready? Here we go. Number 1, what is your current giving or involvement routine? These are things that you're going to ask other people. Here we go. Number 2, what goals are you aiming to achieve? What goals are you aiming to achieve? Number 3, when do you want to see these results? When do you want to see these results? Number 4, what does success look like to you ultimately? Number 5 is, why is this important? When we get connected with what are our current status of where we're at. Number 2, once we understand what are the goals that we're trying to achieve. Number 3, once we understand when do we want to see these results. Number 4, once we understand what success looks like in achieving these results. And then number 5, why is this important? When we get focused on that, and when you combine the courage, the consistent action, and the intentional systems, impact becomes not just a goal anymore. It becomes a natural outcome of growth. But in order for us to be better and produce better, it requires us to take action, intentional action. Confidence allows us to lead better. Confidence allows us to be able to be better, and confidence allows us to be more prepared for the development process that's required for us to be able to impact greater. Growth mindset ensures you keep evolving, and courage drives you to action that ultimately changes lives. Look, I know this was more tactical today, but this is what I want you to do. This is your homework for the week. I want you to write down, what is the life that I want to live as an individual? And then I want you to do a second list. And I want you to write down, what type of educator do I want to be? And you know what I want you to do? I want you to put those lists together and do those things. I want you to take the action. A mentor of mine, Jacob Brown, and you'll hear his episode in a few weeks that we recorded. He said that the first step that he would recommend anyone doing is write a letter to yourself 1 year from now. What would you have wanted to accomplish? Where would you have wanted to go? What success would you have wanted to achieve? What things would you have wanted to learn? Who would you have wanted to meet? What things would you have wanted to feel? What things would you have wanted to experience? I want you to do the work to restore your confidence. I don't want you to be damaged by systems or people. I want you to have the courage to do the inner work so that you can show up better. I want you to remember the moments and the miracles that you've already created in so many students' lives. And then I want you to be the leader that's committed to doing the work, taking intentional action, growing your mindset, cultivating a courage about yourself so that we can go from confidence to impact. One of the questions that we always ask here on the Contagious Culture podcast is, what type of culture am I spreading? Remember, the energy you bring is the culture you create. Make yours worth catching. We'll see you all next episode.